6 months after a god of destruction left Earth with a warning and a reprieve, Metropolis had learned to breathe again. The sterile efficiency of Superman's regime had given way to something messier, louder, more alive. Street markets selling produce from liberated seeds, restaurants experimenting with pre-regime recipes, children playing in parks without surveillance drones tracking their movements. The city still bore scars from 5 years of authoritarian control, but healing had begun. Slowly. Imperfectly. Hopefully. Clark Kent stood on the roof of the reconstructed Daily Planet building, rebuilt not as regime propaganda headquarters but as actual journalism, watching the sun rise over a city he'd once ruled and now simply protected. 6 months of proving himself. 6 months of earning trust rather than demanding it. 6 months of living with the weight of thousands of decisions he couldn't undo, only trying to balance through relentless, exhausting atonement. His powers had returned completely after Beerus's transformation wore off, but Clark wielded them differently now, carefully, with constant awareness that godlike strength didn't grant moral authority. He'd stopped criminals last week without breaking bones, had negotiated with activists instead of arresting them, had admitted mistakes publicly, repeatedly, until the words stopped feeling like swallowing glass and started feeling like necessary medicine. It wasn't enough, would never be enough. But it was something. "You're brooding again," Lois Lane's voice carried from the rooftop access door. She approached slowly. They'd reconciled partially, though reconciled was generous for the careful détente between a woman whose death had catalyzed tyranny and the man who'd become a tyrant in her name. This Lois came from a parallel Earth, brought during the multiverse chaos, a constant reminder of what Clark had lost and what he'd become. The therapist said brooding counts as avoidance behavior. The therapist says a lot of things. Clark smiled slightly. Most of them are accurate and uncomfortable. Therapy had been Bruce's suggestion. Well, suggestion, in the way Batman suggested things, presenting comprehensive psychological research, and nodding that refusing treatment demonstrated continued refusal to address root trauma. Clark had resisted for approximately 3 days before accepting that if gods needed accountability, they probably also needed therapy. "Perimeter check," Lois asked, understanding his routines now. "Perimeter check," Clark confirmed. "Gotham's stable, Coast City's rebuilding. The Messiah opened diplomatic channels. No major threats detected." He paused. "Which makes me nervous. 6 months is too long for the universe to stay quiet. Maybe the universe is giving us a break after 5 years of your regime, and a god of destruction's visit. Maybe, or maybe something worse is coming." Clark's instincts, honed through decades of heroism before the regime corrupted them, screamed that the calm was temporary, threatening, the kind of silence that preceded catastrophic storms. He was right. 3,000 miles away, in the ruins of Suicide Slum, where regime forces had once hunted insurgents, Marcus's restaurant had become legend. The establishment that survived Superman's assault through Beerus's protection now operated as a symbol of Earth's cultural resilience. Marcus had expanded, not through corporate growth or regime efficiency, but through mentorship, teaching dozens of chefs the techniques Superman's agricultural policies had nearly eliminated. The restaurant seated maybe 40 people comfortably, 50 if you didn't mind crowding, but its influence stretched globally. Today, Marcus prepared for a very specific guest. "He's coming back," Marcus told his sous chef, a young woman named Alina who'd learned cooking in regime re-education facilities as therapy and discovered she had genuine talent. "I can feel it. 6 months exactly since he left. Gods of destruction probably operate on schedules." "You think he'll be pleased?" Alina asked nervously, checking the chocolate souffle in the oven. Real chocolate, real eggs, real cream, ingredients that represented 6 months of agricultural recovery. "I think he'll judge us honestly, which is terrifying and fair." Marcus examined fresh strawberries, the first successful crop from seeds Beerus had liberated, carefully cultivated by farmers who remembered when growing food meant art rather than meeting regime quotas. "These need to be perfect." He destroyed planets for less. The dimensional rift opened at precisely noon, golden energy cascading through reality as Wise's staff connected across universal boundaries. Beerus stepped through into Suicide Slum's rebuilt district, looking exactly as he had 6 months ago. Purple fur immaculate, Egyptian-inspired clothing crisp, expression carrying the bored superiority of someone who'd seen civilizations rise and fall like tides. Beerus said, sniffing the air. His ears perked forward slightly. Interesting. The atmospheric composition has changed. Less fear, more hope. Do hope particles have a scent? Lord Beerus, Wise followed through the portal, staff in hand, expression patient as always. I've explained repeatedly that unauthorized dimensional tourism creates temporal paperwork I'm required to file. The Supreme Kai was very insistent about documentation. The Supreme Kai is always insistent about something tedious. Beerus ignored his attendant's gentle reproach, tail swishing as he examined Metropolis's skyline. The architecture has changed. Less authoritarian brutalism. More aesthetic diversity. Did they actually listen to my lecture about cultural preservation? Perhaps they simply wanted to avoid planetary destruction, Wise suggested delicately. Also acceptable motivation. Batman had been monitoring dimensional anomalies since Beerus's departure, because of course he had. The Watchtower's sensors, rebuilt after regime dissolution, detected the energy signature immediately. Bruce's voice crackled through Justice League communications with the calm urgency of someone who'd prepared contingencies for exactly this scenario. Beerus is back. Everyone stay calm. Oracle locates Superman and Wonder Woman. Flash, I need a rapid response ready but not deployed. We're not threatening him. Hal, keep the Green Lantern Corps on standby but out of visual range. Cyborg, make sure all our defensive systems are offline. We're showing trust, not suspicion. Bruce, Diana's voice came through, carrying the weight of 6 months rebuilding her understanding of leadership. What if he's here to judge whether we've maintained the changes? What if we've failed his standards? Then we accept his judgment and hope Earth's culinary improvements count for something. Move. Superman arrived at Marcus's restaurant within minutes. Landing gently outside rather than crashing through walls, a symbolic restraint he'd learned to demonstrate constantly. Beerus stood at the entrance, examining the establishment's expansion with a critical eye. New tables, larger kitchen, windows that let in natural light. The building breathed in ways regime architecture never had. Superman, Beerus acknowledged without particular warmth. You're not wearing regime colors, progress, or calculated presentation. Progress, Clark said quietly. The regime's over, officially dissolved. We're rebuilding without authoritarian control. Beerus's tail swished, non-committal. Words are easy. Let's see if your actions match them. Marcus. The chef emerged from his kitchen, wiping his hands on an apron, expression mixing pride and terror. Lord Beerus, welcome back. We've prepared. Show me what Earth's food culture has become in 6 months without regime restrictions. No prepared speeches, just cook. Honestly. Marcus nodded, disappeared into his kitchen. Within minutes, dishes began emerging. Not the elaborate presentation Superman's regime would have demanded, but genuine food crafted with care. Fresh salads using heritage vegetables. Seared fish with herbs that had been contraband 6 months ago. Bread baked from wheat varieties the regime had nearly eliminated. And strawberries. Perfect, red, naturally grown strawberries served with real cream. Beerus ate in focused silence while Superman stood nearby, no longer commanding but simply present. Wonder Woman arrived minutes later, followed by Flash, Batman materializing from the shadows, Hal Jordan landing with Green Lantern energy dimmed respectfully. The Justice League reformed. Not as regime enforcers, not as world rulers, but as heroes learning to protect without controlling. After the 4th course, Beerus set down his utensils with the careful precision that preceded divine judgment. Acceptable, he pronounced. Not exceptional, but acceptable given your recovery timeline. The strawberries are properly cultivated. The heritage varieties show genetic diversity. Marcus, Your technique has improved. The fish was perfectly seared. Earth has demonstrated sufficient commitment to culinary preservation. Marcus exhaled in relief that looked like prayer. Thank you, Lord Beerus, we've worked. However, Beerus interrupted, and the temperature dropped 5 degrees from pure divine displeasure radiating off his form. I detect something concerning. Recent traces, foreign energy signature, omega radiation. His eyes narrowed, yellow irises glowing. Apocalypse has been observing your planet. Superman's blood went cold. Darkseid, the Lord of Apocalypse, new god conqueror who made the regime look like children playing at tyranny. During the regime years, Darkseid had kept a distance, not from fear of Superman, but from calculated assessment that Earth under authoritarian control wasn't worth conquering. A regime-controlled planet was already subjugated, just by different management. But Earth rebuilding democracy, relearning freedom vulnerable during Reconstruction, that was an opportunity. How long? Batman demanded, mind already racing through contingencies. Observation traces date back approximately 4 months, Beerus said, examining his claws with affected disinterest. Boom tube signatures, dimensional scanning, survey drones. Darkseid's been watching you rebuild, analyzing your weaknesses, planning optimal conquest timing. He looked at Superman directly. Congratulations. By dismantling your authoritarian regime, you've made Earth an attractive target for actual tyranny. We had to choose, Diana said firmly. Freedom with risk versus guaranteed oppression. We chose freedom. I know, I'm not criticizing your decision. Beerus's tail swished. I'm informing you that Darkseid noticed your vulnerability and is coming to exploit it, probably soon. As if summoned by prophecy, the sky tore open. Not the golden rift of Wise's dimensional travel, but the burning doorways of boom tube technology, Apocalypse's signature transportation, portals that tasted of fire and tyranny. Dozens of them, hundreds, opening across Metropolis like wounds in reality, disgorging parademons by the thousands. The invasion had begun. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Hope shines brightest in the darkest night. Superman shot into the sky, heat vision lancing through parademon formations. Wonder Woman launched upward, sword drawn, not her regime blade, but a new weapon forged in the Messiera, blessed with prayers for protection rather than conquest. Flash moved at speeds, turning him into living perimeter defense, evacuating civilians from combat zones. Hal Jordan's ring blazed green, constructing shields over population centers. Batman disappeared into tactical coordination, voice calm through communications, as he directed response with surgical precision. The parademons came in waves, mindless soldiers transformed from conquered populations, humanity stripped away and replaced with loyalty to Darkseid. They'd once been people like Earth citizens. Now they were weapons. Horror wrapped in wings and claws, screaming through Metropolis streets with single-minded devotion to conquest. Clark destroyed the first wave efficiently, heat vision cutting through alien biology, frost breath freezing entire formations. But he held back deliberately, not using full strength, not employing the overwhelming force that had characterized regime enforcement. Because the line between necessary defense and totalitarian control was thin, easily crossed, and he'd spent 6 months learning to recognize when he approached it. Clark, Diana's voice carried urgency as she bisected a parademon mid-flight. You're holding back, full power, we need full power. I'm using enough power, Clark responded, catching a falling civilian and depositing them in Flash's evacuation corridor. Not maximum power, there's a difference. The difference being, Hal Jordan created constructs, giant fists battering rams, shields, holding the line over coast cities, rebuilt districts. Maximum power means collateral damage, means prioritizing victory over lives, means becoming what I was. Superman caught 3 parademons simultaneously, neutralized them without killing when possible, eliminated them when necessary, but not casually. I won't win Earth's freedom by destroying the people I'm protecting. Noble, Batman's voice was dry through comms, but Darkseid doesn't care about your moral growth. Oracle is detecting larger signatures incoming. This is just advanced forces. He was right. Through the boom tubes came Apocalypse's elite, Granny Goodness leading female furies, Kalibak roaring challenges, Steppenwolf directing Parademon legions with military precision. And behind them, visible through the largest portal, Apocalypse itself, nightmare planet of fire pits and slave cities, industrial tyranny given planetary form. Beerus watched from Marcus's restaurant rooftop, consuming strawberries while an apocalyptic invasion unfolded across Metropolis. Wise stood beside him, staff glowing softly, expression carrying the patient concern of someone who'd seen this exact scenario countless times. Lord Beerus, Wise said gently, this appears to be an extinction-level invasion. Perhaps we should intervene. Beerus selected another strawberry, examining it critically. Why? This is their planet, their conflict, their problem to solve. Because you preserved this planet's culinary culture specifically to prevent its destruction. I preserved it from Superman's regime, eliminating food diversity. Darkseid's invasion is a separate issue entirely. Beerus consumed the strawberry, making a pleased sound. Besides, I'm curious. Will Superman revert to authoritarian methods when genuinely threatened? Will Earth's heroes choose freedom or survival when the choice becomes absolute? You're testing them, Wise observed. I'm eating strawberries and observing mortal behavior. If they happen to be tested by Apocalypse's invasion, that's incidental. Beerus's tail swished. Though if Darkseid damages this restaurant or threatens Earth's agricultural recovery, I'll erase him and his planet. Obviously, Wise agreed, long experience teaching him when his lord had already decided to intervene but wanted moral justification first. Across the city, Superman fought with precision rather than overwhelming force. Every punch calculated, every blast is measured, protecting without pulverizing, defending without dominating. 6 months of practice made the restraint slightly less excruciating, but the temptation whispered constantly, use full power, end threats instantly, accept collateral damage for victory, prove you're still Earth's strongest protector. He resisted, barely, because Beerus was watching and the god of destruction's judgment mattered less than Clark's own. A building collapsed, Parademon explosive piercing support structure, 30 floors of reconstructed apartments cascading downward with hundreds of families inside. Superman moved faster than thought, caught the building mid-collapse, heat vision welding support beams, freeze breath cooling stressed metal, holding tons of concrete and steel and human lives through sheer Kryptonian strength. Flash, Clark's voice strained with effort. Evacuation, 30 seconds before structural failure. Barry Allen moved. Superspeed became a humanitarian miracle as he evacuated every resident in 28 seconds, returning them to ground level before Superman's strength gave out, and the building completed its collapse into rubble instead of onto people. 0 casualties. But the 30 seconds Clark spent catching buildings meant 30 seconds he wasn't fighting the invasion. Wonder Woman saw the calculation, the choice. Clark, you can't save everyone individually. We need strategic. I can try, Clark interrupted, already moving toward another collapsing structure. That's all I can do, try, every time, even when it's not efficient. Kalibak, Darkseid's son, massive, brutal, stronger than most gods, recognized Superman's restraint and exploited it viciously. He began targeting civilians specifically, forcing Clark to choose between engaging the enemy or preventing casualties. Classic tactic. Effective, monstrous. The Kryptonian is weak. Kalibak roared, smashing through a hospital. Soft, this is Earth's great protector, pathetic. Superman caught the hospital, held it, saved everyone inside, and took Kalibak's follow-up attack directly to his face. The punch sent him through 3 buildings, fortunately evacuated, and embedded him in the ruins of what had been a regime detention center. The irony wasn't lost on him. Get up. Batman's voice was sharp through comms. "You're being baited. Caliban wants you off the field." "Don't give him what he wants." Clark pulled himself from rubble, spat blood. The impact had actually hurt despite Kryptonian durability. "I'm not abandoning civilians to fight more efficiently, Bruce. I'm not asking you to, I'm telling you to trust the team. Flash handles evacuation. Diana handles Caliban. You handle the boom tubes, close them, cut off reinforcements. Strategic thinking, Clark. We trained for this." They had trained for this. 6 months of rebuilding Justice League coordination without regime hierarchy, learning to function as a team rather than subordinates following Superman's absolute authority, trusting each other, distributing responsibility. Superman nodded, refocused. "Understood. Diana, I have Caliban." Wonder Woman intercepted Darkseid's son with Amazonian ferocity, sword meeting his mother's box-powered axe in combat that cracked pavement for blocks. "Close the portals." Clark flew toward the largest boom tube, heat vision building to temperatures that could affect new god technology. But as he approached, the portal expanded further, and through it came a presence that made the air feel heavier, made hope itself seem harder to maintain. Darkseid, the Lord of Apocalypse, stepped through into Metropolis with the casual arrogance of a god who'd conquered thousands of worlds. Gray stone skin, red eyes glowing with Omega power, presence radiating tyranny made manifest. He looked at Earth's resistance, heroes fighting desperately, civilians fleeing in terror, cities burning, and smiled. "Earth," Darkseid's voice carried supernatural resonance, "has been watching you rebuild. Watched Superman's regime fall. Watched you choose freedom over strength, democracy over security. Admirable, naive, ultimately fatal." Superman floated before the Lord of Apocalypse, Kryptonian strength against new god divinity. They'd fought before, during the regime years, inconclusive battles that ended in stalemate because both recognized the mutual destruction continued combat would bring. But that was when Clark fought without restraint, willing to destroy anything for victory. Now he had limits, had chosen limits, had learned that power without accountability corrupted absolutely. And Darkseid saw that weakness clearly. "You've changed, Kal-El," Darkseid observed. "Once you were dangerous, unpredictable, willing to kill even your allies to maintain control. That's Superman I respected. This one," he gestured dismissively. "This one tries to save everyone, limits himself, chains his own power. This one is easy to defeat." "Maybe," Clark admitted, "but this one can look at himself in the mirror. How comforting that will be when your planet belongs to Apocalypse." Darkseid's eyes glowed brighter, Omega beams building, power that could track targets through dimensions, erase them from existence, kill even gods. "Shall we test your new restraint against an actual threat?" The Omega beams lanced out. Superman dodged, barely, Kryptonian speed the only thing saving him from erasure. The beams tracked, curved, followed with nightmarish precision. Clark flew faster, weaving between buildings, leading the beams away from population centers even as they pursued him relentlessly. This was the choice, the test. Turn and fight Darkseid with everything, potentially defeating him but destroying half of Metropolis in the process. Or keep running, keep dodging, keep prioritizing civilian safety over efficient combat, and eventually fail because even Kryptonian speed had limits. During the regime, Clark would have chosen victory without hesitation, would have justified collateral damage as a necessary sacrifice, would have rebuilt the ruins, and told himself the dead died for the greater good. Now he made a different choice. "Diana," Superman's voice carried desperate urgency as Omega beams closed the distance. "I need 30 seconds. Coordinate evacuation, Flash, Cyborg, everyone. Get people out of the blast radius." "Clark, if you're planning what I think," Batman's voice held rare fear. "Trust me, Bruce. For once, just trust that I learned something." Superman stopped running, turned, faced Darkseid's Omega beams directly, And instead of dodging or trying to tank hits he couldn't survive, he did something regime-era Superman would never have considered. He asked for help. Hal's shield. Green Lantern's ring blazed, emerald construct manifesting between Superman and Omega beams, pure willpower made manifest, powerful enough to deflect even new god energy. For 3 seconds, not long, but enough. Cyborg boom tube counter frequency, disrupt his portal network. Cyborg's systems, half-mother box technology, interfaced with Apocalypse tech in ways purely organic heroes couldn't. The boom tubes flickered, destabilized, and Paradigm reinforcements found themselves dumped into random dimensional coordinates instead of Metropolis streets. Diana, now Wonder Woman, having forced Calabac into the river, redirected toward Darkseid with an Amazonian war cry that echoed across the city. Her lasso, the lasso of truth, blessed by Hestia herself, wrapped around Darkseid's arm mid-Omega beam, divine magic interfering with new god technology just long enough to disrupt targeting. Team coordination, distributed strength, trust instead of absolute control. The Omega beams went wide, burning through empty airspace instead of Superman's chest, and Clark used the opening exactly as Bruce had taught him during 6 months of rebuilding tactical cooperation, not for overwhelming counterattack but for strategic positioning. He grabbed Darkseid, not to punch him, not to kill him, to fly him away from civilian populations, up through the atmosphere into space, where their battle wouldn't flatten neighborhoods. Darkseid actually laughed, a sound like continents grinding against each other. The Kryptonian wants honorable combat away from his precious mortals. How disappointingly heroic. But he didn't resist, didn't need to, because Superman's restraint was exactly what made him exploitable. They broke through the atmosphere into the cold vacuum of space, Darkseid radiating power that made nearby satellites malfunction, Superman holding position through sheer Kryptonian might. Earth hung below them, blue and green and fragile, worth protecting even if protection meant accepting vulnerability. "Here's your choice, Kal-El," Darkseid said softly. "Fight me here with full power and maybe you survive, but my forces continue conquering your planet below. Every minute you waste on me means thousands dying to my parademons." His smile was pure tyranny. "Or return to Earth, accept my Omega beams, eventually finding you while you play hero to individual civilians and die slowly while failing to save everyone." It was a perfect trap. The exact dilemma that had driven Clark toward authoritarian control 5 years ago. Insufficient power to save everyone, forced to choose who lived and died, unable to accept the fundamental limitation of heroism in a cruel universe. During the regime, Superman had solved this problem through total control. Can't choose who to save if you control everything absolutely. Can't face impossible choices if you eliminate the circumstances creating them. Authoritarianism as a solution to the paradox of limited heroism. Now Clark Kent, 6 months removed from regime dissolution, floating in space with Earth's greatest threat, understood something Beerus had tried to teach him. "You're right," Superman said quietly. "I can't save everyone, can't be everywhere, can't prevent every death or tragedy or injustice. But what?" Darkseid demanded. "But that's not a failure, that's the reality of heroism, trying anyway, saving who you can. Accepting that limitation doesn't justify abandoning moral restraint." Clark met Darkseid's red eyes directly. "I can't beat you and save everyone on Earth simultaneously, but my team can. Because I'm not Earth's only protector anymore. I'm just one hero who learned to trust others. Touching, weak, and ultimately futile." Darkseid's Omega beams fired point-blank range, impossible to dodge at this distance. And Marcus's restaurant exploded with purple divine energy as Beerus's patience ran out. The explosion wasn't destructive, not in the conventional sense. Beerus simply moved, and reality adjusted to accommodate his displeasure. One moment, he sat on Marcus's rooftop, consuming strawberries while observing mortal conflict with detached curiosity. The next, he stood in low Earth orbit between Superman and Darkseid, one hand raised almost negligently, catching omega beams that could erase gods from existence the way someone might catch an irritating insect. The beams stopped, not deflected, not absorbed, simply stopped, frozen in space 3 inches from Beerus's palm, red energy crackling with frustrated power that had nowhere to go. Omega energy, Beerus observed, examining the captured beams with academic interest. Interesting application of the anti-life principle. Not particularly impressive compared to Hawkeye, but creative in its own limited way. He looked at Darkseid with the bored expression of someone who'd seen variations of this exact tyranny across thousands of civilizations. "You're interrupting my meal. Again. This is becoming a pattern with despots in this universe." Darkseid stared at the purple-furred deity who'd appeared from nowhere and casually negated the power that had killed new gods. His stone features remained impassive, but calculations ran behind those red eyes: threat assessment, power analysis, strategic recalibration. "You're the anomaly. The creature Superman's intelligence is reported, the one who dismantled his regime. God of destruction, actually. Creature is rather dismissive." Beerus released the omega beams, letting them dissipate into background radiation. "And I didn't dismantle the regime. I simply demonstrated its irrelevance while pursuing quality cuisine. There's a difference. You protect Earth, then." "I protect Earth's culinary potential. Vast difference." Beerus's tail swished with growing irritation. "I was sampling Marcus's strawberry cultivation, 6 months of agricultural recovery showing genuine promise, when your invasion disrupted the meal. Do you understand how offensive that is, interrupting someone during strawberry appreciation?" Superman floated nearby, processing the impossible. Beerus had moved faster than he could perceive, caught omega beams that could kill Kryptonians, and seemed more annoyed about disrupted dining than existential threats to planetary survival. The god of destruction's priorities remained magnificently, terrifyingly consistent. "Lord Beerus," Clark said carefully, "you don't need to." "I don't need to do anything," Beerus interrupted. "But I'm irritated, which means I'm choosing to address the irritation source." He looked at Darkseid directly. "Leave. Take your parademons, your furies, your conquest machinery, and leave. Earth's food culture is under my observation. Interference is grounds for erasure." Darkseid's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. The recognition a true predator has when encountering something higher on the food chain. He'd conquered thousands of worlds, fought the source itself, searched eternally for the anti-life equation. But the being before him radiated power on a scale that made even new god divinity seem quaint. "I am Darkseid," he said slowly. "Lord of Apocalypse, conqueror of galaxies. I do not retreat from—" Beerus flicked his finger. The gesture was casual, almost lazy, but the resulting wave of Hawkeye energy carved through 3 of Darkseid's boom tubes, erasing them from existence, not closing them, not disrupting them, but making them cease to have ever been open. Parademons mid-transit simply vanished, dimensional corridors unmade, and Apocalypse's carefully orchestrated invasion lost 30% of its reinforcement capacity in one motion. "You were saying?" Beerus asked politely. Darkseid's omega beams fired instantly, not building up, not telegraphing, pure tactical response from someone who'd survived millennia through lethal decisiveness. The beams tracked toward Beerus at speeds approaching light, curving through space with nightmare precision, carrying enough power to atomize planets. Beerus leaned slightly to the left. The omega beams passed through the space his head had occupied and continued into deep space, eventually dissipating somewhere near Jupiter's orbit after vaporizing several asteroids that happened to be in the way. "Omega energy is impressive for this universe's power scale," Beerus observed, straightening his collar, "but you're fundamentally misunderstanding our relative positions in the cosmic hierarchy. You're a new god, impressive by local standards. I'm a god of destruction. We operate on entirely different tiers." He yawned, showing fangs. "Shall I demonstrate?" "Lord Beerus." Wise's voice crackled through dimensional communication from Marcus's restaurant below. Please remember the Supreme Kai's very explicit instructions about not destroying inhabited planets during your visits to alternate dimensions. The paperwork was quite extensive. I'm not destroying Earth, Beerus replied, annoyed. I'm considering destroying Apocalypse, completely different target. On Earth's surface, the Justice League fought increasingly desperate holding actions against Apocalypse's forces. Wonder Woman dueled Granny Goodness and 3 female Furies simultaneously. Amazonian combat mastery against millennia of new god military training. Flash evacuated entire neighborhoods ahead of Parademon bombardments, his speed the only thing preventing casualty counts from climbing into thousands. Green Lantern and Cyborg coordinated defensive constructs over major population centers, Emerald willpower and Mother Box technology, creating barriers that held, barely, against sustained assault. Batman coordinated from the rebuilt Watchtower, voice calm through communications despite watching Earth face potential extinction. Oracle redirects satellite defenses to Sector 7. Canary, your team needs to fall back. You're about to be overrun. Nightwing, get those civilians into the underground shelters now. Bruce, Barbara Gordon's voice carried strain from the Batcave, we're losing ground everywhere. Regime infrastructure would have handled this more efficiently. Automated defenses, prepositioned forces, centralized command. Regime infrastructure would have made us easier to conquer, Batman interrupted. Darkseid specializes in co-opting authoritarian systems. Decentralized resistance is harder to eliminate. He paused. Though I admit, harder to eliminate is small comfort when elimination remains likely. In Gotham, because of course the invasion hit Gotham, Red Hood fought with the controlled fury of someone who'd spent 5 years wanting Superman dead and now fought to protect Earth from worse tyranny. Jason Todd's methods remained brutal but precise, eliminating parademons with lethal efficiency while coordinating local resistance. I've got refugees flooding into Crime Alley, Jason reported. Dual pistols dropping parademons with kryptonite-laced rounds, Batman's contingency supplies repurposed for alien invasion. They're scared, asking if Superman's going to save them if the regime's coming back to restore order. His voice went hard. Some of them want it back, want the control, say freedom's not worth dying for. Batman was silent for long seconds, processing the psychological cost of Darkseid's invasion. People so traumatized by 5 years of authoritarian safety that they'd welcome its return rather than face existential freedom. It was the tyrant's ultimate victory, breaking people so thoroughly they begged for chains. Tell them, Bruce said carefully, that Superman's fighting in orbit, that Wonder Woman's holding the line, that Flash is saving thousands, that we're choosing to protect them as free people rather than control them as subjects. He paused. And if they still want the regime back after we survive this, they can vote for it, because that's what democracy means. In space, Darkseid recalculated. The purple deity had demonstrated power beyond Omega beams, beyond new god capabilities, possibly beyond anything the Fourth World had produced. Continuing direct assault seemed tactically inadvisable, but retreat meant acknowledging defeat, and Darkseid did not retreat, ever. His entire theology of tyranny rested on absolute certainty, unwavering conquest, and the inevitable triumph of his will over all resistance. You protect this planet's food culture, Darkseid said slowly, mind working through implications. But what of the planet itself, the billions of mortals? Do you care if they live or die so long as the cuisine survives? Excellent question. Beerus tilted his head, considering seriously. If Earth's population were eliminated but the agricultural knowledge preserved, would I care? Philosophically interesting. He looked at Superman. What do you think, Kryptonian? From your experience as both tyrant and reformed hero, does the value lie in the people or their cultural products? Clark understood he was being tested. Again, Beerus operated on scales that made individual lives seem irrelevant, but the god of destruction kept asking questions that suggested he valued something beyond pure power. The people matter. They create the culture. Eliminate them and you eliminate the potential for new creation, new recipes, new culinary evolution. Preservation without creativity is just stagnation. Correct answer. Beerus smiled slightly. Though I suspect you're also saying what you think I want to hear, still, the logic is sound. Dead civilizations don't innovate. He looked at Darkseid. So yes, I suppose I care about Earth's population surviving. They're the source of the food culture I'm preserving. Then we have a negotiation. Darkseid's red eyes gleamed with tactical satisfaction. You want Earth's mortals alive. I want Earth conquered. Compromise. I conquer the planet but preserve the population. They become apocalypse subjects, forced to produce their cuisine under my control. Everyone wins. Everyone except the billions enslaved, Superman said flatly. Slavery is such an ugly term. I prefer organized productivity under divine guidance. Darkseid's smile was pure tyranny. They'll create their cultural products more efficiently under proper supervision. No waste, no inefficiency, no chaos of democratic choice disrupting optimal output. Beerus's expression went very, very cold. His ears flattened against his skull. His tail went completely still, the stillness that preceded divine judgment. You just suggested systematic elimination of creative freedom for administrative efficiency. That sounds familiar. It's called effective governance, Darkseid said. Superman understood it before his allies corrupted him with sentiment. Control produces results. Freedom produces chaos. It's called, Beerus countered softly, exactly the reasoning that offended me enough to dismantle Superman's regime. Food created under oppression tastes like despair. Cuisine developed without creative freedom becomes mechanical reproduction rather than art. His voice dropped to something absolutely lethal. You're proposing to turn Earth into a culinary factory. That is unacceptable. Then fight me for it. Darkseid's Omega beams charged again, power building. New god against destroyer god. True power against borrowed authority. Let's see which philosophy survives. Lord Beerus, Wise's voice carried gentle warning through dimensional communication. If you're going to fight, please do so away from the planet. Collateral damage from deity-tier combat tends to sterilize biospheres. Obviously, Beerus cracked his knuckles, joints popping with sounds like reality fracturing. Darkseid, you and I are going somewhere else. Somewhere your defeat won't damage Earth's agricultural infrastructure. I don't take orders from, Beerus grabbed Darkseid by the arm. The Lord of Apocalypse, who'd never been manhandled by anyone in his eternal existence, felt himself yanked through space faster than thought, dragged past the moon, past Mars, deposited in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, where combat wouldn't threaten inhabited worlds. Here's fine, Beerus said, releasing Darkseid in the void. Remote, uninhabited, perfect for demonstrating why threatening Earth's food culture was catastrophically poor judgment. Superman followed at Kryptonian speeds, arriving in time to witness what happened when a god of destruction stopped being polite. Darkseid launched an immediate assault. Omega beams, physical strikes backed by new god strength, reality manipulation attempting to trap Beerus in dimensional loops. Everything he'd used to conquer galaxies, applied with lethal expertise against an opponent who dismissed him as irrelevant. Beerus dodged it all with bored efficiency, not struggling, not straining, simply moving slightly faster than Darkseid could track, existing in spaces between attacks, treating the Lord of Apocalypse's ultimate techniques like a child's tantrum requiring patient tolerance. Is this your full power? Beerus asked after 30 seconds of one-sided combat. Because if so, I'm genuinely confused how you've conquered anything more threatening than agricultural planets. Darkseid roared actual rage, the emotion he'd eliminated from his psyche millennia ago, returning in the face of dismissive superiority. He poured everything into Omega beams, not tactical anymore, just raw destructive power channeled through new god biology. Beerus caught the beams in both hands, held them, examined the energy composition, then compressed them into a ball roughly the size of a baseball. Omega energy is fundamentally interesting, he observed academically. Anti-life principle encoded into directed force. Philosophically opposed to Hawkeye, you erase individual existence while I unmake universal presence. He tossed the compressed Omega energy back to Darkseid. But philosophically interesting doesn't mean practically effective. The compressed Omega beams detonated against Darkseid at point-blank range. His own power, condensed and reflected, hitting with force he'd never experienced. The Lord of Apocalypse flew backward through 3 asteroids, stone body actually cracking, invulnerability breached for the first time in his eternal existence. He pulled himself from the rubble, gray skin leaking something that wasn't quite blood but served a similar function for new god biology. Pain, actual pain. And behind the pain, something Darkseid had forgotten existed: fear. You're stronger, he admitted, not surrender, analysis. But strength isn't everything. I have armies, Apocalypse's full military capacity, technology developed over millennia. The anti-life equation's fragments. The anti-life equation, Beerus interrupted, that you've been searching for eternally. That would eliminate free will across the universe. He smiled, showing fangs. I'm a god of destruction. Free will is irrelevant to me. If you possessed the complete anti-life equation and used it, I'd simply erase you and the equation simultaneously. Mathematical proofs don't protect against Hawkeye. Darkseid stared, because the purple deity was right. The anti-life equation worked by proving mathematically that free will didn't exist, that hope was irrational, and that submission to Darkseid's will was the only logical conclusion. But mathematics couldn't defend against pure destruction, against power that operated outside universal laws. What do you want? Darkseid asked, not pleading, negotiating, recognizing when conquest became impossible and survival required compromise. Leave Earth alone, Beerus said simply. Permanently, take your parademons, your invasion force, your conquest ambitions, and never return. Earth's food culture is under my observation. Interference means I erase Apocalypse from existence. You destroy an entire planet for cuisine. I've destroyed entire galaxies for less compelling reasons. Beerus examined his claws. Apocalypse is a miserable hellscape anyway. Fire pits and slave cities. No culinary value whatsoever. Frankly, you'd be doing the universe a favor if you improved your own planet's food culture instead of conquering others. Superman floated nearby, processing the surreal negotiation. Cosmic entities discussing planetary destruction with the same casual tone people used for dinner reservations. Darkseid, Earth isn't worth this. There are billions of other worlds. Just leave us alone. Leave one conquered world unclaimed. Darkseid's eyes narrowed. That's a weakness. Weakness invites further challenges. I don't retreat, ever. Then call it strategic repositioning. Batman's voice crackled through Superman's calm, because of course Bruce was monitoring even this cosmic confrontation. Tell your forces you're honoring a god of destruction's claim on Earth's domain, not retreat, diplomatic recognition of superior power. Darkseid considered this. Tyrants required narratives that preserved their authority even in defeat. A god of destruction's territorial claim. Apocalypse respects cosmic hierarchy. He looked at Beerus. You're claiming Earth as your domain. I'm claiming Earth's culinary culture as worth preserving, Beerus corrected. The planet itself is incidental, but yes, if it helps your narrative, Earth is under my observation. Interference equals erasure. Spread that message to anyone else considering invasion. Agreed. Darkseid straightened despite his injuries, stone features reassembling into an impassive mask. But understand this, destroyer god, I am patient, eternal. If you ever lose interest in this planet, if your observation ever lapses, he smiled. I'll be waiting. Feel free to wait, Beerus yawned. I have eternity too, and unlike you, I spend it enjoying quality cuisine rather than brooding about conquest. Much more fulfilling lifestyle. Darkseid opened a boom tube back to Apocalypse, paused at the threshold. Superman, you were dangerous once. A worthy opponent who understood that power requires absolute control. Now you're weak, restrained. When this god abandons you, and he will, cosmic beings always do, I'll return. And you'll remember why the universe needs tyrants. I'll remember, Clark said quietly, why it needs heroes instead. Darkseid departed through the boom tube. Within minutes, the invasion forces on Earth received recall orders, parademons withdrawing through portals, female furies retreating, Kalibak roaring protests before being dragged back to Apocalypse by Granny Goodness. The attack ended as suddenly as it began, leaving Earth battered but surviving. In Metropolis, Wonder Woman watched the parademons flee and felt something she hadn't experienced in 6 months. Genuine relief mixed with disturbing realization. They'd survived only because a god of destruction happened to value Earth's food culture. Without Beerus, the invasion would have succeeded. Earth's freedom, so carefully rebuilt, remained contingent on cosmic whim. Diana, Flash approached, costume torn, exhausted from hours of continuous evacuation runs. We won. Why don't you look happy? Because we didn't win, Diana said quietly. Beerus won. We just survived in proximity to his victory. She looked at the city's damaged districts, the fires being extinguished, the casualties being counted. We chose freedom over control, but freedom means vulnerability, and vulnerability almost cost us everything today. So what do? We rebuild again, and we get stronger, not through authoritarian control, through actual strength, team coordination, strategic preparation, because next time Beerus might not be here. In space, Superman thanked the god of destruction with genuine gratitude and underlying fear. You saved Earth, again. We owe you. You owe me continued commitment to culinary excellence, Beerus interrupted. That's payment enough, though I admit, watching you resist the temptation to use authoritarian methods during the invasion was entertaining. You've learned something. I learned that restraint means sometimes you can't save everyone immediately. That efficiency isn't the only metric for heroism. That being powerful doesn't mean controlling everything. Clark paused. But I also learned that restraint makes us vulnerable. Darkseid was right about that much. Vulnerability is the price of freedom, Beerus said. As you humans like to say, better to die free than live enslaved. Though personally, I prefer not dying at all and eating good food. But I'm immortal, so my perspective differs. They returned to Earth, to Marcus's restaurant, where Wise waited patiently with fresh strawberries, and the resigned expression of someone who'd filed dimensional tourism incident reports countless times before. The Supreme Kai will have questions. Wise said delicately. The Supreme Kai always has questions, Beerus replied. Tell them I was maintaining cosmic balance by preventing Apocalypse from disrupting an agriculturally significant planet. Very official, very proper. You threatened to destroy Apocalypse over strawberries. Agriculturally significant planet. Beerus emphasized each word. Write it however makes the paperwork easiest. The Justice League assembled at the restaurant, battered, exhausted, alive. Batman arrived last, having coordinated post-invasion recovery efforts with the efficiency that made him invaluable despite lacking powers. He studied Beerus with a calculating expression, his mind already working through implications. You're not staying permanently, are you? Bruce asked directly. No, I visit occasionally, observe culinary progress, ensure no one eliminates food diversity for administrative convenience. Beerus consumed another strawberry. Why? Because Earth can't depend on you. We're grateful for your intervention today, but contingency planning requires assuming we'll face threats without divine assistance. Batman's voice held no accusation, just tactical reality. We need to be able to defend ourselves. Agreed, Beerus nodded approvingly. Dependence on external saviors makes civilizations weak. You should absolutely prepare to handle future crises independently, he smiled. Just don't let that preparation involve eliminating agricultural diversity or controlling food culture. That still merits erasure. Understood. As evening fell over damaged Metropolis, citizens emerged from shelters to survey the destruction. Buildings collapsed, infrastructure damaged, casualties fewer than expected thanks to flashes of evacuations and League coordination, but still too many. Earth had survived but barely, and only through cosmic intervention. Some voices began calling for Superman's regime restoration, for safety over freedom, for control that could prevent future invasions. The fear Darkseid had planted found fertile soil in traumatized minds. But others, more others, louder voices, looked at the Justice League's defense, at heroes who'd fought without becoming tyrants, at Flash's evacuations and Diana's leadership and Superman's restraint, and chose freedom anyway. Choose vulnerability with dignity over safety with chains. Hope shines brightest in the darkest night. Someone had spray-painted on a damaged building. The insurgency's old slogan, now Earth's rallying cry. Beerus prepared to depart, a dimensional rift opening. Marcus, continue developing Earth's culinary culture. Superman, maintain your restraint. Regression to authoritarianism means I return permanently and not pleasantly. Batman, your paranoid preparation is actually sensible. Wonder Woman, leadership suits you better than enforcement ever did. The rest of you, he shrugged. Try not to die before I visit next time. I've become invested in this planet's food potential. When will you return? Clark asked. When I'm curious about your progress, or when someone threatens Earth's agriculture, or when I'm bored. Beerus stepped toward the rift. Whichever comes first. He vanished through golden energy, leaving Earth to its messy, vulnerable, free existence. The 3 weeks following Apocalypse's repelled invasion taught Earth a lesson more painful than the attack itself. Survival created almost as many problems as extinction would have. Metropolis's damage required months of reconstruction. Gotham's infrastructure, barely recovered from regime years, suffered catastrophic setbacks. Coast City lost entire districts. And across the globe, the psychological cost of nearly being conquered manifested in political chaos that made Superman's regime look stable by comparison. 17 nations are demanding Justice League oversight, Batman reported during an emergency session in the rebuilt Watchtower. The space station floated in orbit, monitoring Earth's recovery with sensors that tracked everything from structural damage to social media sentiment. Bruce stood before holographic displays showing global instability, governments collapsing, authoritarian movements gaining traction, fearful populations demanding safety at any cost. They want superpowered peacekeepers enforcing international security. 3 are explicitly requesting Superman establish protective governance. Clark sat at the conference table looking physically ill. That's how the regime started. One crisis, one request for help, one compromise that became precedent that became tyranny. He met Bruce's eyes. I can't, even if they're asking, especially because they're asking. I know, Batman's voice carried rare approval. But refusing means accepting that some nations will descend into chaos, that people will die who might have been saved through intervention. Can you live with that? I lived with 5 years of systematic oppression I caused. I can live with not becoming a dictator again, even if the alternative is messy. Superman's jaw tight. Freedom means accepting consequences. That's what Beerus taught me, what you tried teaching me for years before I stopped listening. Wonder Woman stood near the observation windows, watching Earth rotate below, beautiful, fragile, perpetually on the edge of destroying itself. Clark's right. We protect, we don't rule. But Batman's also right. Refusal has costs. People are scared. When people are scared, they make dangerous choices. Like voting for strongmen who promise safety through control, Flash added. Barry Allen had spent 3 weeks running disaster relief at superhuman speeds, evacuating flood zones, delivering medical supplies, moving faster than exhaustion could catch him. He looked hollowed out, running on determination and guilt. I've seen it everywhere. Towns are begging for temporary emergency oversight. Cities requesting interim security governance. It's regime language with friendlier packaging. Then we need to demonstrate alternatives, Cyborg said. half his systems still repairing from apocalypse tech damage. Show that democracy can handle crises without surrendering to authoritarianism. Prove freedom works even when it's difficult. How? Hal Jordan asked bluntly. Green Lantern had spent the weeks coordinating with the Corps, explaining to Guardians of Oa why Earth kept attracting cosmic threats. The Guardians' response had been diplomatically phrased but fundamentally clear. Earth was becoming a liability, and Green Lantern needed to ensure it didn't destabilize Sector 2814 further. How do we prove democracy works when 17 nations are actively abandoning it? Batman pulled up economic projections, infrastructure assessments, and psychological models. By being better heroes than we were during the regime, by helping people without controlling them, by demonstrating that power serves rather than rules. He looked at each League member. It's going to be harder than the regime, slower, messier, less efficient, but it's the only way that doesn't end with us becoming what we fought. The meeting continued for hours, planning disaster relief without political interference, coordinating infrastructure support without imposing governance, threading the impossible needle between helpful intervention and creeping authoritarianism. Every decision carried weight. One wrong move, one moment of overreach, and Superman's nightmare of becoming what he'd escaped would manifest with popular mandate instead of force. In Marcus's restaurant, now famous enough to require reservations months in advance, the chef dealt with his own post-invasion complications. The establishment had become symbolic during Beerus's visit and Apocalypse's attack, proof that cultural resistance mattered, that food represented more than nutrition, that preserving cuisine meant preserving humanity's soul, which meant everyone wanted a piece of it. Mr. Marcus, the businessman, who wore an expensive suit and predatory smile that reminded Marcus of regime administrators, "My corporation specializes in scaling successful concepts. Your restaurant could be a global franchise. Standardized menu, optimized supply chains, consistent quality control. Everything that eliminates what makes it worth preserving," Marcus interrupted, not looking up from prep work. He was making bread, real bread, heritage wheat, techniques his grandmother taught him before the regime eliminated inefficient grains. Standardization is what Superman's regime tried. It failed. Go away. You're leaving money on the table. Money's not what I'm reaching for. Marcus shaped the dough with practiced hands, feeling the texture, adjusting by instinct rather than measurement. This restaurant succeeds because it's personal, unique, not reproducible. The moment it becomes a franchise is the moment it dies. Now leave before I have Alina throw you out. His sous chef, cleaning vegetables nearby, cracked her knuckles meaningfully. The businessman left. "They'll keep coming," Alina said. "Everyone wants to own a piece of what Beerus protected, turn it into profit. Let them come. I've survived Superman's regime and Apocalypse's invasion. Corporate raiders don't scare me." Marcus examined the bread dough critically. "Though I admit, constant attempts to commodify everything that matters get exhausting. Maybe that's the point. Wear you down until selling out seems reasonable." Maybe, but Beerus didn't protect Earth's culinary culture, so I could turn it into fast food. I owe him better than that. Across town, in the ruins of what had been a regime re-education facility, now being converted into a community center through volunteer labor, Superman worked alongside civilians rebuilding their neighborhood. Not as a leader, not as a supervisor, as one person among many, using Kryptonian strength for construction while discussing plans with architects who'd never build regime-style brutalist efficiency again. "Higher on that beam, please," the foreman directed, and Clark adjusted without arguing. 3 months ago, taking orders from civilians would have been inconceivable. Now it felt appropriate, necessary. Part of demonstrating that power served rather than commanded. A young woman approached during break, maybe 20, wearing clothes that had seen better days, expression carrying the careful wariness of someone who'd survived trauma. "You're Superman." "I'm Clark Kent," he corrected gently. "Superman's what I do, not what I am." "You killed my brother," said flatly, factually. "During the regime, he was protesting outside the Hall of Justice. You used heat vision, precise. Surgical, he died instantly." She watched his face carefully. "Do you remember him?" Clark's stomach dropped because he didn't remember. 5 years of regime enforcement, thousands of necessary eliminations, individual faces blurring into statistical categories of threats neutralized and order maintained. He'd stopped seeing people and started seeing obstacles to be removed. "No," he admitted. "I don't remember, and that's worse than remembering, isn't it? That I killed so many people they became forgettable." His name was Marcus Chen. He was 23. He wanted to be a teacher. The woman's voice remained eerily calm. "I'm telling you because you should know, because forgetting victims is how tyrants stay tyrants." "You're right." Clark met her eyes directly, not flinching from deserved condemnation. "I'm sorry. It's inadequate and doesn't bring him back, but I'm sorry. And I understand if you want me to leave this project." "No," she cut him off. "I want you here helping, rebuilding. I want you to remember my brother every time you lift a beam or pour concrete. I want his name attached to your penance." She turned to leave, then looked back. "Hope shines brightest in the darkest night." That's what Marcus believed. He died believing it. Don't make his death meaningless by giving up on redemption. She walked away, leaving Clark holding a steel beam, Kryptonian strength trembling with very human guilt. That evening, the Watchtower detected anomalies that made Batman's paranoid contingency planning seem insufficient. Oracle's voice carried through communications with unusual urgency. "Bruce, we've got dimensional signatures, multiple locations, not boom tubes, different energy pattern. Analyzing now, but it matches." "Oh no." "Oracle. It matches Beerus's arrival signature, but bigger, more of them. Bruce, I think we're about to get visitors from Universe 7, plural." Within the hour, 7-dimensional rifts opened across Earth, not Wise's elegant golden portals, but rougher tiers in reality suggesting less controlled travel. Through them stepped beings that made Apocalypse's new gods look primitive. Gods of destruction from other universes, supreme Kais, even an angel attendant or two, all converging on Earth with expressions ranging from curious to irritated to diplomatically concerned. They assembled at Marcus's restaurant, because of course they did, Beerus's repeated visits having marked the location as significant across dimensional boundaries. The chef looked at his dining room, suddenly filled with cosmic entities, and did what any reasonable person would do, started cooking for gods. Beerus arrived last, through Wise's proper portal, looking annoyed. "I told you this was my discovery. Earth's culinary culture is under my observation specifically." "Your observation created multiverse-wide curiosity," responded a blue-skinned goddess with white hair and divine robes, Champa, god of destruction from Universe 6, Beerus's twin brother. "When you file reports about agriculturally significant planet with restored food diversity, other destroyers pay attention. We want to see what's worth preserving. It's not a tourist attraction." "Then you shouldn't have been so enthusiastic in your documentation," said a green-skinned Supreme Kai diplomatically. Lord Beerus's descriptions of Earth's cuisine made it sound exceptional. Naturally, curiosity was piqued. Superman landed outside the restaurant, processing the impossible. Earth, barely recovered from one cosmic threat, now hosted multiple reality-threatening entities having what appeared to be a divine food tour. Batman appeared from the shadows seconds later, having teleported from the Watchtower the moment Oracle reported the anomalies. "This is bad," Bruce said quietly. "Which part? The multiple gods of destruction or the international incident if they're disappointed?" "Yes." Inside, Marcus served dishes to beings who could erase galaxies, strawberries to Champa, fish to a fox-like destroyer named Quitla, carefully prepared rice to a muscular elephant deity called Moscow. Each god sampled critically, comparing their own universe's cuisine, judging with standards that made Michelin critics seem generous. "Adequate," Champa pronounced. "Not as refined as Universe 6's cuisine, but showing potential. The strawberries have good texture, though the flavor profile suggests immature cultivation techniques. They're 6 months into agricultural recovery from authoritarian elimination of crop diversity, Beerus said defensively. Give them credit for baseline competence under difficult circumstances. Still primitive compared to Universe 6. Universe 6's food culture benefits from millennia without interference. Earth recovered from regime oppression in months. Context matters, Champa. The twin destroyers glared at each other with divine sibling rivalry that made the air crackle with potential violence. Wise and Vados, Champa's attendant, stepped between them with the patient expressions of angels who'd prevented fratricide countless times. Perhaps, Vados suggested delicately, a competition would be more appropriate than combat. Earth's food culture versus Universe 6's. Friendly comparison, no destruction. Absolutely not, Batman said, entering the restaurant. All divine attention focused on the human in bat-themed armor who just refused cosmic beings. Earth isn't a competition venue. We're rebuilding. We don't need additional pressure. The mortal speaks sense, said Quitla, the fox deity known for cunning. But he also reveals weakness. Beerus claims Earth is agriculturally significant, yet its representative refuses cosmic recognition. Perhaps the significance is overstated. Or perhaps, Superman said, joining Batman, we've learned that cosmic attention usually precedes cosmic disaster. We're grateful for Lord Beerus's protection, but Earth needs recovery time, not divine tourism. Champa laughed, a sound like universes grinding together. The Kryptonian has courage. Stupid courage, but courage. Tell me, Superman, Beerus's files mention you were a tyrant, a mortal who played at godhood. How did that work out? Poorly, Clark admitted. I learned that power without accountability corrupts. That control isn't protection. That trying to rule people for their own good makes you the villain. He met Champa's eyes directly somehow. With respect. We don't need more powerful beings deciding what's best for Earth. We need space to figure it out ourselves. Several gods of destruction exchanged glances, surprised perhaps that mortals would speak to them with anything resembling spine rather than terrified worship. I like this one, Champa said. He's learned humility through suffering, classic mortal narrative. He looked at Beerus. Your Earth is more interesting than I expected, brother, not just the food, the psychology. Mortals choosing freedom despite vulnerability. Fascinating. That's why it's worth preserving, Beerus said. They're learning, growing, producing a culture that has genuine value rather than mechanical reproduction. Give them time, and Earth's cuisine could rival anything in Universe 6. Bold claim, accurate claim, but only if you lot stop disrupting their recovery with divine tourism. Marcus emerged from the kitchen carrying his masterpiece, a dessert he'd been developing for months, combining techniques from 6 continents, ingredients from liberated seeds, creativity freed from regime restrictions. Gentlemen, ladies, divine entities, I have something special, not perfect, not refined, but honest, made with care rather than efficiency. Earth's cuisine is at its current best. The dessert was architectural, layers of chocolate from African cacao beans, strawberries from Beerus's liberated seeds, cream from traditional dairies, and pastry using heritage wheat. It looked like hope made edible, like resistance through beauty, like everything Superman's regime had tried to eliminate and everything Earth fought to preserve. The gods of destruction sampled it in focused silence. Champa's expression shifted from dismissive to intrigued. Quitla's cynical smirk softened into genuine appreciation. Even Moscow, who communicated through his attendant and rarely showed emotion, made sounds suggesting approval. This, Champa said slowly, this is actually good. Not Universe 6 is good, but legitimately impressive for a recovering civilization. The chocolate has depth. The strawberries are perfectly ripe. The technique shows understanding of balance. He looked at Marcus directly. You made this? Yes, Lord Champa. Under what conditions? 6 months ago, most of these ingredients were illegal. The regime had eliminated them as inefficient. Lord Beerus's intervention preserved the genetic diversity and gave us a chance to cultivate again. This desert represents Earth choosing culture over efficiency, freedom over control. Marcus met the god's eyes. It's not perfect, but it's ours. Champa nodded slowly. That's what makes it valuable, not technical perfection, honest creation from genuine choice. He looked at Beerus. You were right, brother. Earth's cuisine is worth preserving, not because it's the best, it's not, but because it demonstrates what free civilizations can create given opportunity. Told you. Don't gloat, it's unbecoming for a destroyer god. The other deities agreed. Earth's food culture showed promise, merited protection, deserved time to develop without interference. One by one, they departed through dimensional rifts, having satisfied curiosity and, more importantly, having declared unofficial cosmic protection over Earth's agricultural development. When only Beerus, Wise, and the Justice League remained, Clark asked the question everyone was thinking. That was a test, wasn't it? Making us defend Earth's value to multiple destroyers. Everything's a test when you're mortal interacting with gods, Beerus said. But yes, Champa respects strength even in mortals. Quitla respects cunning. The others respect various qualities. By standing up for yourselves, not arrogantly but firmly, you demonstrated that Earth's worth preserving is beyond just food. He consumed the last of Marcus's dessert. You're learning, slowly, but learning. What if we'd failed the test? Then I'd have erased your planet before Champa did. Quick death is more merciful. Beerus stood, brushing crumbs from his robes. But you didn't fail. You showed backbone. That matters to gods of destruction. We respect beings who fight for what they value, even against hopeless odds. Batman processed the implications. Earth had just been evaluated by multiple reality-threatening entities and passed judgment through a combination of culinary competence and diplomatic courage. You put us in that situation intentionally. Knew the other destroyers would come. Wanted to see how we'd respond. Perhaps I simply filed enthusiastic reports and cosmic bureaucracy created natural consequences. Beerus smiled, showing fangs. Either way, Earth's now under unofficial protection from multiple universes. Darkseid won't be your only problem if he returns. He'd face me and Champa, possibly Quitla if he's bored. That's actually helpful, thank you. Don't thank me, maintain your culinary culture. Continue choosing freedom over control. Keep producing food worth not destroying. Beerus moved toward where Wise prepared the dimensional portal. And Superman, don't regress to authoritarianism. Other destroyers are watching now. They're less patient than I am. Understood, Clark said quietly. We'll try to deserve the protection we've been given. Try hard. Cosmic protection is conditional on continued good behavior. Beerus paused at the portal threshold. Oh, and Batman, your contingency plans are admirable but insufficient. If you're planning ways to fight gods of destruction, I recommend focusing on evacuation protocols instead. You can't win, but you can survive. Sometimes that's enough. Noted, Beerus and Wise departed, leaving Earth's hero standing in Marcus's restaurant, processing the evening's impossibilities. Wonder Woman spoke first. We just survived divine evaluation by maintaining cultural integrity and refusing to be intimidated. That's not how I expected today to go. Nothing about Earth makes sense anymore, Flash said. We're a barely recovered planet under cosmic protection because we make good desserts and our reformed tyrant has a spine now. It's absurd, Hal agreed. It's hope, Clark corrected softly. We chose freedom knowing it made us vulnerable, nearly got conquered because of it. And somehow that choice, that commitment to doing things right instead of efficiently, earned cosmic protection we could never enforce ourselves. It's ridiculous, improbable, hopeful. Batman allowed himself a slight smile, a rare expression, earned through impossible circumstances breaking in Earth's favor. Hope shines brightest in the darkest night, even when the darkness is cosmic and the hope is ridiculous. Especially then, Diana agreed. They stood together in a restaurant that had become a symbol, surrounded by evidence of Earth's recovery, protected by gods who valued culture over conquest, facing an uncertain future with hard-earned unity instead of authoritarian control. Somewhere in Universe 7, Beerus reported to the Supreme Kai about Earth's progress. The report was enthusiastic, detailed, and though Beerus would never admit it, surprisingly proud of the mortals who'd chosen freedom over safety and somehow made it work. In Universe 6, Champa filed similar reports, adding notes about potential food competition opportunities once Earth's cuisine developed further. Sibling rivalry demanded eventual comparison, but even Champa acknowledged Earth needed time to grow. And on Earth itself, Marcus returned to his kitchen, Alina beside him, preparing for tomorrow's service. The restaurant that survived regime oppression and cosmic evaluation would open for lunch. People would eat. Culture would continue. Freedom would persist, messy and imperfect, and worth every difficult choice required to maintain it. 2 months after the gods of destruction declared Earth agriculturally significant, the planet discovered that cosmic protection came with cosmic expectations. Reports reached the watchtower of dimensional tourists, not deities this time, but beings from Universe 7, curious about the planet multiple destroyers found worth preserving. Most were harmless, academics studying Earth's cultural recovery, traders seeking unique ingredients, even a few warriors testing themselves against the planet that survived apocalypse. Most were harmless, not all. Intruder alert Sector 7. Oracle's voice carried urgency through Justice League communications at 3 a.m. Metropolis time. Energy signature matches Universe 7 origins, but power level is problematic. Comparable to a trained Saiyan, maybe higher. They just destroyed an agricultural research facility in Kansas. Superman was airborne instantly, still learning to wake from actual sleep rather than Kryptonian meditation that barely counted as rest. 6 months of relearning human rhythms, of accepting that invulnerability, didn't exempt him from needing recovery time. He crossed half the continent in 30 seconds, arriving at the smoking ruins of what had been Earth's primary heritage seed preservation center, the backup facility for everything Beerus had liberated from Superman's regime. The building was simply gone, not collapsed, not burned, erased at the molecular level, leaving a perfect crater where decades of agricultural preservation had been stored. Standing in the center of that crater was a figure wearing Universe 7's distinctive clothing, gi marked with symbols Clark didn't recognize, power radiating off him in waves that made the air shimmer. Young, maybe early 20s by human standards, with spiky black hair and an expression mixing arrogance with boredom. "You're Superman," the intruder said, not bothering with introductions. "The mortal tyrant who learned humility. Lord Beerus's reports made you sound more impressive." "Who are you?" Clark landed carefully, assessing threats. The power level felt familiar, not technique, but intensity, like fighting Zod, like facing Kryptonians who reveled in strength without restraint. "Frost, from Universe 7. I'm what you call a space tyrant, control about 70 planets through military force and strategic intimidation." He smiled, and it reminded Clark sickeningly of his own reflection during regime years. "I heard Beerus protected this pathetic planet because of culinary culture, and I wanted to see what makes you special. So far, unimpressed." "You destroyed a seed preservation facility." Superman's voice went cold. "Decades of work, genetic diversity that can't be replaced. Why? Testing response time, seeing if Earth's protector is actually competent or just lucky that the gods of destruction find you amusing." Frost's power flared, not attacking, just demonstrating. "I've conquered 70 planets. Most fell without resistance. The ones that did resist learned that opposing me meant consequences. You're going to teach Earth that same lesson." "No," Clark said simply. "Leave now before this escalates." "Make me?" Frost's smile widened. "Unless you're too reformed, too restrained, too afraid of becoming a tyrant again to actually fight." It was perfect psychological warfare. Frost had read Beerus's reports, understood Superman's trauma, and recognized exactly how to weaponize rehabilitation against its subject. Fight with full power and risk regression to authoritarian methods. Hold back and watch Earth suffer consequences. Superman chose the hard option. Again. He attacked with measured force, enough to incapacitate, not enough to kill. Super-speed precision strikes, techniques Batman had drilled into him during 6 months of learning restraint. Frost dodged easily, countered with power that sent Clark through a mountain, and laughed at the impact. That's it. That's Earth's great protector. I've fought children with more commitment. Frost appeared beside Superman before he could recover, grabbed him by the cape, and hurled him toward Kansas City. Let's see how much you're willing to restrain yourself when I start destroying populated areas. Batman's voice crackled through comms. Clark, pulling punches isn't working. Threat assessment suggests full Kryptonian response required. Full response means casualties, collateral damage, becoming what I was. Full response means stopping him before he kills thousands. There's a difference. Superman pulled himself from the crater outside Kansas City, civilians screaming and fleeing. Flash appeared in red and yellow blur, evacuating the immediate area at super speed. Wonder Woman descended from the sky, sword drawn, Amazonian fury meeting space tyrant's arrogance. "You will not harm these people," Diana declared. "I'll do whatever I want," Frost replied. "That's what power means, doing whatever you want without consequences. Your Superman knows that. He lived it for 5 years. Now he's pretending weakness is virtue." His power flared again, and the temperature dropped as he prepared some kind of energy attack. "Watch me demonstrate actual strength." Diana moved instantly. 3,000 years of combat experience, blessed by gods, trained by Amazon warriors who'd fought since antiquity. Her sword struck Frost's energy blast, a divine metal deflecting power that could vaporize buildings, and she followed with combination attacks that would have overwhelmed most opponents. Frost caught her sword mid-strike, held it, looked at her with genuine curiosity. "You're stronger than expected. Good technique. But technique doesn't matter when your opponent exists on a different power scale." He twisted, and Diana's blessed sword, forged by Hephaestus, wielded by the greatest warrior of the Messiah, shattered into fragments. "No." Diana stared at her broken weapon, at the impossibility of divine metalwork failing. "Yes." Frost backhanded her almost casually, and Wonder Woman flew backward through 3 buildings before Superman caught her mid-flight, preventing further destruction. "See, this is what real power looks like. No restraint, no mercy, no pretending weakness is nobility." Superman held Diana gently, set her down where Flash was coordinating evacuation, and felt something ancient stirring in his Kryptonian biology. The rage that had driven him during regime years, the fury that made control seem justified, the absolute certainty that protecting people meant eliminating threats permanently, without hesitation. "Clark," Bruce's voice held warning through comms. "I hear your breathing pattern changing. You're getting angry. Stay controlled." He shattered Diana's sword. He destroyed the seed facility. He's threatening civilians. Clark's heat vision started glowing red despite attempts to suppress it. "How much restraint is enough, Bruce? How many people have to suffer before defending them stops being tyranny? As many as it takes to not become what you were. Fight him, stop him, but don't cross the line." Superman flew at Frost with everything: Kryptonian speed, super strength, decades of combat experience against opponents who could match his power. They collided midair with a force that created sonic booms, grappled in flight, moving faster than sound, exchanged blows that cratered the ground when they connected wrong. Frost was stronger, not by much, maybe 10%, maybe 15%, but enough. He'd spent his life conquering, fighting, killing without restraint. Superman had spent 6 months relearning mercy, and mercy was a handicap against someone who'd never known it. "You're holding back," Frost roared, genuine frustration in his voice. "I researched you. You killed the Joker with your bare hands, lobotomized criminals, ruled Earth through fear. Where's that Superman? Where's the god who stopped pretending mortality mattered?" "He's dead," Clark said, blocking a strike that numbed his arms through Kryptonian invulnerability. "I killed him when I learned what he'd become." "Then you killed the only version of yourself worth respecting." Frost's power exploded outward, a golden aura manifestation that Universe 7 warriors called Kai, pushing Superman backward. "I came here expecting a challenge, a fellow tyrant who understood that power means control. Instead, I find a broken god playing at redemption." He moved faster than Superman could track, some technique from Universe 7 combat arts, and hit with combination attacks that actually drew blood from Kryptonian skin. Clark felt his ribs crack, organs bruise, and injuries that wouldn't kill him but demonstrated humiliating vulnerability. "Pathetic," Frost said, standing over fallen Superman. "Beerus was wrong. Earth isn't worth preserving. You're not worth fighting. I'm going to destroy this planet just to remove the disappointment from Universe 7's records." He raised his hand, energy gathering for planet-destroying attack, and Clark faced the impossible choice. Let Earth die because he refused to fight with lethal force, or kill Frost and prove that 6 months of rehabilitation meant nothing when genuinely threatened. Then Marcus arrived, not fighting, not attacking. The chef simply walked into the combat zone carrying a basket, moving with calm purpose past demolished buildings and emergency responders, approaching a space tyrant charging planet-destroying energy without apparent fear. "What are you doing?" Frost looked at the human approaching him like he was dangerous wildlife that might be reasoned with. "I'm about to destroy your planet. Run, insect." "I'm Marcus," the chef said calmly. "I run the restaurant Lord Beerus visits, the one he protected from Superman's regime and Apocalypse's invasion, the one that serves food worth preserving." He set down his basket, revealing fresh bread, cheese, and fruit. "I heard there was a visitor from Universe 7. Thought you might be hungry." "You, what?" Frost's attack faltered, power dimming from sheer confusion. "I'm about to commit genocide and you brought me lunch. Food, actually. Lunch was hours ago." Marcus arranged items on a cloth with practiced efficiency. "Lord Beerus taught us that cuisine matters, that culture through food is worth fighting for. I figure if you're from his universe, maybe you understand that." He looked up at Frost directly. "Or maybe you're just another tyrant who thinks power means you don't have to consider anyone else. Your choice." Superman pulled himself upright, watching this interaction with dawning understanding. Marcus wasn't being naive, wasn't being stupid. He was demonstrating exactly what made Earth worth preserving: the courage to maintain humanity even when facing existential threats, the refusal to let fear eliminate culture, the commitment to values over survival. Frost stared at the human, at the food, at the absurd situation where genocide had been interrupted by a chef offering free samples. "This is a trick." "It's bread," Marcus corrected. "Heritage wheat from seeds Lord Beerus liberated, baked this morning, still warm. Trick would involve poison, which seems rude to someone who hasn't actually destroyed anything yet." He tore a piece and ate it himself. "See, not poison, just good food. I destroyed your seed facility." "Yes, you did, I'm aware. Quite angry about that, actually decades of preservation work gone." Marcus's voice hardened slightly. "But anger doesn't mean abandoning what makes us human, doesn't mean we stop offering hospitality, doesn't mean cuisine stops mattering." He met Frost's eyes. "Lord Beerus protects Earth because we maintain culture despite threats. You're testing whether that's authentic or performance. Here's your answer." Frost's power dimmed completely, not from fear, from genuine confusion that was almost comical on a space tyrant's face. "You're serious? You actually brought food for someone about to destroy your planet?" "I brought food for a visitor from Universe 7 who might not understand why Earth matters. Whether you eat it or kill me is your choice, but I've made my statement." Marcus sat down calmly. "Hope shines brightest in the darkest night, even when the darkness is a space tyrant having an existential crisis." Superman approached slowly, injuries healing through Kryptonian biology. "Marcus, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did." The chef didn't look away from Frost. "You've spent 6 months proving reformed tyrants can choose better. Now it's my turn to prove humans can maintain humanity under pressure. Different demonstrations of the same principle." Frost looked between them, the reformed god-tyrant learning restraint, the human chef refusing to abandon values despite existential threat. Then he looked at the bread Marcus had offered: heritage wheat, cultural preservation, food created through freedom rather than efficiency. He sat down, picked up the bread, tasted it with the careful attention of someone expecting tricks and finding only honest baking. "This is good," Frost admitted. "Simple, but good. The texture is right. The flavor has depth." He looked at Marcus. "You made this. This morning, part of the daily operation. We bake fresh because that's what makes it worth eating." Marcus poured wine, real wine, grapes from vineyards Superman's regime had nearly eliminated. "Earth's cuisine isn't the universe's best. We know that, but it's ours. Created through choice, refined through freedom, maintained despite every threat trying to eliminate it." Lord Beerus mentioned this. Frost consumed more bread and something in his posture shifted, less aggressive, more contemplative. "In his reports, said Earth demonstrated cultural resilience worth preserving. I thought he was being sentimental. Gods of destruction don't get sentimental. They get curious," Superman said carefully. "They protect what interests them. We interest Lord Beerus because we're learning that power doesn't mean control, that strength can serve rather than rule, that even gods can choose restraint." He sat down near Frost, not threatening, not cowering, just present. "What's your story? Why conquer 70 planets?" Frost was silent for long moments. Then, unexpectedly, "Because I'm strong. And in Universe 7, strength means you have the right to rule. That's how it works. Frieza built an empire that way. His family controlled hundreds of worlds. I'm following that model: build power, enforce control, eliminate resistance." He looked at Superman directly. "Like you did for 5 years. "Yes," Clark admitted. "Exactly like I did. It was wrong. Took me time to understand how wrong, but it was tyranny justified through strength, and it nearly destroyed everything worth protecting." "But you were right about one thing," Frost said, still holding Marcus's bread. "Power does prevent chaos. My 70 planets are stable, ordered, safe because I enforce safety. How is that different from protection?" "Consent," Batman's voice came through comms. Bruce had been listening, recording, analyzing. He materialized from shadows nearby, cape billowing. "Superman ruled without consent. You conquer without consent. Protection means people choose your help. Control means they have no choice. That's the difference." Frost laughed, a bitter sound without humor. "In Universe 7, consent is what the strong tell the weak matters while taking what they want anyway. You think Lord Beerus asks permission before destroying planets. He decides they're problematic and erases them. Power is authority. Authority doesn't need consent." "Lord Beerus is a god of destruction," Marcus said quietly. "His role is cosmic balance through elimination. Your role is, what? Conqueror because you can be. That's not cosmic purpose. That's just bullying with better PR." The words hung in the air. Frost's power flared dangerously, not attacking, just an emotional response manifesting as energy. "You dare?" "Yes, I dare." Marcus didn't flinch. "Because what's the alternative? Let you destroy Earth unopposed. At least if you kill me for speaking truth, I die human rather than live as a coward." He poured more wine. "But I don't think you're going to kill me. I think you're here because Beerus's reports confused you. Made you question whether conquering planets is actually an accomplishment or just a habit. Made you wonder if there's something worth protecting that doesn't require control." Frost stared at the human chef, at the reformed tyrant Superman, at the Batman who fought gods through preparation, at Wonder Woman recovering from injuries but ready to fight again despite her shattered sword, at Earth's heroes, battered and resilient, maintaining principles even when principles seemed suicidal. "I don't understand you," Frost said finally. "Any of you. You choose vulnerability when you could choose strength. Choose mercy when you could choose victory. Choosing restraint when eliminating threats would be efficient." He looked at the bread in his hands. "But this is good. The food is genuinely good, and you shared it freely with someone who threatened genocide. That's," he struggled for words, "incomprehensible." "It's hope," Superman said. "It's believing that people, even tyrants, can choose better, that power can serve rather than rule, that strength without compassion is just violence with better marketing." He extended his hand. "You haven't destroyed Earth yet. You could choose not to. Choose to return to Universe 7 without conquering anyone. Choose to question whether your 70 planets are accomplishments or prisons you've built for yourself and others. Frost looked at Superman's extended hand for long, heavy seconds. Decades of conquest programming warred with something new, curiosity about alternatives, the possibility that strength didn't require tyranny, the question of whether 70 conquered planets meant anything beyond enforced compliance. He didn't take Superman's hand, but he didn't destroy Earth either. "I'm leaving," Frost said, standing. "Not because you defeated me, you didn't. Not because I'm afraid I'm not, but because..." He gestured at Marcus's simple meal, at Earth's battered heroes, at the planet that kept surviving impossible odds through stubborn cultural preservation. "Because I want to think about what Lord Beerus sees in you. What makes this pathetic planet worth protecting? Take the bread," Marcus offered. "Share it with your 70 planets. Maybe ask them what they think about being conquered. Maybe consider that subjects and citizens are different categories." Frost took the bread, held it like it was valuable. "If I return..." "You'll be welcome at my restaurant," Marcus interrupted. "Provided you don't destroy anything. House rules." The space tyrant laughed, genuine sound this time, almost surprised. "Universe 7's reports didn't mention you people were insane. We prefer hopefully resilient," Batman said dryly. Frost departed through a dimensional portal, taking Marcus's bread and leaving Earth intact. Not redeemed, not reformed, but questioning, curious, changed just enough that genocide became a postponed consideration rather than an immediate action. Superman collapsed once Frost was gone, adrenaline crash hitting hard. Diana limped over, gathered fragments of her shattered sword. Flash stopped vibrating at evacuation speeds. Hal Jordan landed from orbital observation. Cyborg emerged from where he'd been coordinating emergency response. "Marcus," Clark said exhaustedly, "you risked your life offering food to someone threatening planetary destruction." "Yes," the chef agreed calmly, "because that's what Lord Beerus protected. Not just the food, the culture behind it. The humanity that insists on maintaining values even when values seem suicidal. If we abandon that under threat, we prove it was performance rather than principle." "You're braver than most soldiers I've known," Diana said quietly, holding sword fragments that represented 3 millennia of Amazonian heritage. "Not brave, stubborn, there's a difference." Marcus began packing his basket. "Though I admit I was terrified, but fear doesn't mean you abandon what matters. Lord Beerus taught us that by valuing our culture enough to preserve it, seems only right to demonstrate we're worth his faith." Batman helped him stand. "You weaponized hospitality, turned cultural values into psychological warfare. That's actually brilliant. I made bread and shared it. Everything else is your tactical interpretation." They returned to Kansas to survey the destroyed seed facility, to calculate what genetic diversity had been lost and what could be recovered. The damage was catastrophic but not irreparable. Backup facilities existed, redundancy protocols activated. Earth's agricultural preservation network proving resilient through distributed architecture, rather than centralized control. "We'll rebuild," Clark said, looking at the crater where decades of work had been stored. "Again, like we always do." "Eventually we'll run out of things to rebuild," Hal pointed out. "Then we'll build new things. That's what living civilizations do." Superman's voice carried hard-earned certainty. "We survive, we adapt, we maintain our values, even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult." That night, across Universe 7, Frost sat on his flagship orbiting one of his 70 conquered planets, eating Marcus's bread and reading Beerus's reports about Earth. About a planet that chose freedom despite vulnerability. About a tyrant who learned restraint. About a chef who valued culture enough to risk death maintaining it. And for the first time in his career of conquest, Frost wondered if power meant more than control. 3 months after Frost's departure, Earth achieved something unprecedented in its turbulent history: boring stability. The Justice League coordinated disaster relief without political overreach. Marcus's restaurant inspired hundreds of imitators celebrating regional cuisine. Agricultural recovery exceeded projections. The 17 nations that had demanded authoritarian oversight gradually, grudgingly, accepted that democracy could function during Reconstruction. Not efficiently, not smoothly, but functionally enough that freedom remained preferable to controlled safety. Superman spent those months proving rehabilitation through relentless, exhausting consistency. Every disaster response is measured. Every rescue is calculated. Every public appearance demonstrated that power served rather than ruled. The psychological cost was immense, constantly monitoring himself for regime pattern thinking, for authoritarian reflexes, for the seductive logic that control prevented chaos. But he maintained it, day after day, rescue after rescue, choice after choice. "You're getting better at this," Lois observed one evening watching Clark return from earthquake relief in Chile. He'd spent 18 hours moving rubble, coordinating with local teams, following their directions rather than imposing his own. "The restraint looks less painful now." "It's still painful," Clark admitted, collapsing onto their couch. Their relationship remained complicated, but cohabitation had resumed tentatively. "Every time I see someone suffering and know I could fix it faster by taking control, the temptation whispers. But pain means I'm still choosing, still fighting the easy answer." The regime was the easy answer. Exactly, efficient, simple, wrong. He looked at his hands, Kryptonian strength that could reshape continents or gently rescue kittens depending on his choices. "Beerus taught me that power without accountability corrupts. You taught me that good intentions don't justify tyranny. Bruce taught me that preparation can replace control. Diana taught me that strength can serve." He smiled slightly. "I'm a slow learner, but I'm learning." Clark Kent, the student of heroism after 20 years of being Superman. There's irony in that. There's hope in that. Means even gods can grow. The tranquility was shattered at 2 a.m. when Oracle's emergency broadcast woke every Justice League member simultaneously. Code Omega. Multiple dimensional breaches. Energy signatures match. "Oh no. Oh no. Bruce, we've got apocalypse signatures. Dozens of them, and something else. Something bigger." Batman was already moving, Gotham's shadows releasing him toward the Batcave's teleportation platform. Darkseid. Worse, Omega's signature is exponentially higher than Darkseid's standard readings. Either he's powered up significantly, or Oracle's voice caught. "Bruce, the signature matches theoretical calculations for what we'd see if Darkseid obtained the complete anti-life equation." Superman heard the broadcast mid-flight toward the watchtower, already calculating response times and evacuation protocols. "That's impossible. The anti-life equation is fragmented across the universe. No one successfully assembled it in recorded history," Batman interrupted, appearing on the watchtower via boom tube. "Captured Apocalypse tech repurposed during regime years, kept operational through paranoid contingency planning. Doesn't mean it's impossible, just improbable. And Darkseid's been searching for millennia. Maybe he finally succeeded." The sky over Metropolis tore open with boom tubes that felt different, heavier, wronger, carrying weight that pressed against consciousness itself. Through them came not parademons, not furies, not standard invasion forces. Through them came Darkseid himself, floating above the city and behind him. The equation. It manifested as mathematical truth made visible, symbols and numbers that hurt to perceive, proof encoded into reality that free will was an illusion, that hope was irrational, that submission to Darkseid's tyranny was the only logical conclusion. The anti-life equation wasn't a weapon. It was a philosophical argument so perfectly constructed that perceiving it meant accepting it, understanding it meant surrendering to it, consciousness itself rewriting to acknowledge Darkseid's absolute authority. "People of Earth," Darkseid's voice carried across every broadcast frequency, every communication device, every consciousness capable of understanding language. "I have ascended beyond new God to become truth incarnate. The anti-life equation proves mathematically that I am the universe's rightful ruler. Resistance is illogical. Defiance is impossible. You will submit, not because I force you, because you will understand that submission is correct. Superman felt it immediately, the equation pressing against his mind, logical structure arguing that Darkseid's tyranny was justified, that individual choice was delusion, that hope itself was a mathematically disproven fallacy. His Kryptonian intellect, capable of processing vast amounts of information, made him more vulnerable rather than less. He could understand the equation's logic, could see how each element built upon the last into a seemingly undeniable conclusion. "Clark," Diana's voice cut through beginning acceptance. "Don't listen. It's a lie wrapped in mathematics. Truth isn't what's logical, truth is what's real." But Diana herself was struggling. The equation argued that her warrior's strength meant she should rule, that power justified authority, that Amazon philosophy of peace through superior force was just dressed-up tyranny. It found her doubts from regime years and amplified them into crushing certainty that she'd been right to support Superman's control. Across Earth, 8 billion people heard the equation and began accepting it, not through force, through understanding. Governments surrendered not because armies compelled them, but because leaders concluded resistance was irrational. Criminals stopped mid-crime to walk toward apocalypse forces, accepting that they should be controlled. Heroes laid down their weapons because fighting truth seemed pointless. The anti-life equation was the perfect tyranny. One people chose because the alternative was denying mathematical proof. Batman felt it too. Every logical pathway in his detective's mind mapped the equation's structure, found it internally consistent, and accepted that his entire crusade against authoritarianism was built on emotional appeals rather than a rational foundation. Why fight tyranny if tyranny was the logical endpoint of governance? Why preserve freedom if freedom was proven an illusion? He fell to his knees in the watchtower, cowl falling back, Bruce Wayne's face showing defeat for the first time in his vigilante career. Alfred, Bruce's voice was hollow through comms to the Batcave. "I was wrong. Everything I fought for, it's mathematically disproven. Darkseid is right. Control is correct. I'm sorry I wasted our lives resisting the truth." "Master Bruce," Alfred Pennyworth's voice carried across dimensional broadcasts with the stern certainty of a butler who'd raised Batman and wouldn't surrender him to mathematical despair. "The equation proves nothing except that Darkseid is a very convincing liar. Now get up. Your planet needs you to be stubborn, not logical. But the math. Bugger the math. Some truths exist beyond equations. Now activate contingency, Omega-7, and stop mopping." Batman's hands moved toward controls before conscious thought caught up. Contingency, Omega-7, protocol developed after Darkseid's first invasion, never tested, built on the assumption that the anti-life equation might eventually be obtained. The protocol didn't fight the equation. It accepted the equation was correct, for entities bound by its logic. Oracle activate worldwide broadcast. Route through every device, every frequency, every consciousness-reaching medium we control. Bruce's voice steadied, the detective's mind finding the flaw in perfect proof. If we can't deny the equation, we acknowledge it and find who it doesn't apply to. Bruce, that's insane. Who wouldn't be bound by mathematical proof of? Gods of destruction, Batman interrupted. Beings who exist outside universal laws, who operate on principles beyond logic, whose power transcends mathematical limitations. He looked up at Earth's sky, where Darkseid hovered, energy radiating. Contact Beerus, now. In Universe 7, Beerus was awakened from deep sleep by Wise's urgent notification that Earth was broadcasting a desperate plea across dimensional boundaries. The god of destruction listened to Batman's message, delivered with characteristic precision despite anti-life equation pressure, and understood the situation immediately. Darkseid obtained the complete anti-life equation, Beerus summarized, already irritated at being woken. He's using it to convert Earth's population through philosophical proof rather than force. Clever, irritating, and completely irrelevant to me. He stretched, joints popping. Why should I care? Because, Batman's voice carried across dimensions with desperate hope, the equation proves tyranny is logically correct. If Earth accepts it, they'll rebuild authoritarian control, efficiency over culture, control over choice. Everything you dismantled regarding food regulations will return because people will conclude it's mathematically optimal. Culinary diversity will be eliminated, again, permanently, through their own rational acceptance. Beerus's eyes opened fully. His tail went very, very still. He's going to eliminate food culture through mathematics, through philosophy that makes people choose rationally. Yes, that's even more offensive than Superman's regime approach. Beerus stood, divine displeasure radiating. At least the Kryptonian admitted his control was an emotional reaction to trauma. This Darkseid creature is trying to prove that tyranny is logically correct. That's philosophically insulting. So you'll help. I'm going to erase the part of him that thinks mathematical proof trumps a god of destruction's opinion about cuisine. Beerus looked at Wise. Prepare dimensional transit, fastest route to Earth. I'm addressing this personally. Lord Beerus, Wise said carefully, the anti-life equation is said to be one of the universe's fundamental truths. Even you might be affected by. I'm a god of destruction. I destroy fundamental truths when they annoy me. This one just became very annoying. The dimensional rift opened over Metropolis, golden energy cutting through Apocalypse's boom tubes like scissors through paper. Beerus and Wise emerged into a planet in the process of surrendering to mathematical certainty, where billions of people accepted tyranny because denying it seemed irrational. Darkseid saw them and smiled. The destroyer god returns. Perfect timing. You can witness Earth's conversion to enlightened order. Unlike before, you have no grounds for objection. They're choosing this freely through rational acceptance of proven truth. Proven truth. Beerus examined the anti-life equation with divine perception that saw beyond mathematics into fundamental reality. This is just a very aggressive philosophy packaged as absolute certainty. Impressive sophistry, not actually true. The equation is mathematically perfect. It proves that you're good at manipulating logical structures to reach predetermined conclusions. That's not the truth. That's just being an excellent liar. Beerus's tail lashed. And more importantly, it's threatening to eliminate Earth's food culture through rationalized control. That violates my territorial claim. Your territorial claim is based on aesthetic preferences. Mine is based on mathematical proof. Logic supersedes preference. Does it? Beerus smiled, showing fangs. Let's test that hypothesis. Here's my equation. I'm stronger than you. Therefore, what I say matters more than what you prove. Simple, elegant, empirically demonstrable. Moved. Not attacking Darkseid, attacking the anti-life equation itself. Hake energy, the force that erased existence at fundamental levels, directed not at the physical manifestation but at the philosophical framework underlying it. Purple divine power wrapped around mathematical symbols, reality rewriting proof, and the logical structure that convinced billions of people that tyranny was correct. And Beerus destroyed it, not defeated it in philosophical debate, not argued against its premises. Simply erased it from existence as if mathematical proof could be unmade through sufficient power. Because to a god of destruction, everything, physics, philosophy, mathematics, was just structures that could be eliminated if they became annoying. The anti-life equation screamed as it died, not sound, but feeling, the sensation of absolute certainty dissolving into uncertainty, of proven truth becoming questionable hypothesis, of tyranny losing its rational justification and returning to naked authoritarianism. 8 billion minds suddenly freed from perfect logical prison, consciousness returning to messy uncertainty where free will at least seemed possible. Superman gasped as the equation's pressure vanished, Kryptonian intellect no longer trapped in circular logic proving submission correct. Diana shook off the mathematical certainty that power justified rule. Batman pulled himself upright, detective's mind freed to question rather than accept. Flash started moving again. Hal Jordan's ring blazed with willpower, no longer convinced that willpower was irrational. Across Earth, people blinked awake from philosophical trance and remembered why they'd chosen freedom over proven certainty. Darkseid stared at the space where the anti-life equation had existed, millennia of searching, fragments assembled across galaxies, complete proof of his rightful tyranny, and watched it simply cease to exist because a purple cat god found it philosophically offensive. "That's impossible," Darkseid said, voice carrying genuine shock for the first time in his eternal existence. "The equation is a fundamental truth. You can't destroy truth. I'm a god of destruction. I destroy whatever annoys me, including fundamental truths that threaten food culture." Beerus cracked his knuckles. "Now, you've invaded Earth twice despite my warning, threatened its people, attempted to eliminate their free will through philosophical manipulation, and worst of all, you were going to rationalize the elimination of culinary diversity as logically optimal. You're going to fight me over food preferences. I'm going to erase you and your miserable planet for threatening the cuisine I've declared worth preserving." Beerus's power manifested fully, a purple aura that made reality feel thin, a presence that reminded everything mortal that gods existed on scales beyond comprehension. "This is your final warning. Leave Earth alone, forever, or discover what happens when gods of destruction stop being patient." Darkseid calculated odds with the cold precision that had kept him alive through eternal war. The anti-life equation was gone. His trump card was eliminated. Beerus had demonstrated the power to destroy philosophical concepts themselves. Continuing meant facing an opponent who operated outside the universal rules that gave new gods their authority. "I am Darkseid," he said quietly. "I do not surrender, do not retreat, do not acknowledge defeat." "Then you die." Beerus raised his hand, Hawkeye energy. "Wait," Superman flew between them, "foolish, suicidal, necessary. Lord Beerus, don't. If you kill Darkseid, Apocalypse will destabilize. War across the fourth world. Millions are dying in a power vacuum. Letting him leave means he lives to threaten us again, but killing him creates worse problems. So I should permit him to continue existing out of administrative convenience." Beerus's eyes glowed dangerously. "That seems like poor precedent. You should permit him to leave because you're teaching Earth that power doesn't always mean control, that strength can show mercy, that even gods of destruction can choose restraint." Clark met Beerus's gaze directly. "You taught me that, during my month as a mortal. Now teach Darkseid that losing doesn't require death, that defeat can include survival." Beerus considered this. "You're asking me to show mercy to a tyrant who tried to enslave your planet twice. I'm asking you to demonstrate what you've been trying to teach me, that power without wisdom is just violence, that destroying everything that offends you is easy, that choosing not to destroy takes actual strength." "Philosophical manipulation," Beerus observed. "Using my own lessons against me. Clever." He looked at Darkseid. "You have Superman's restraint to thank for your continued existence. He's learned that eliminating threats isn't always the optimal response. I'm curious if you're capable of similar growth." "I am Darkseid," the Lord of Apocalypse repeated. "I do not grow, I do not change, I am eternal constant." "Then you're boring." Beerus lowered his hand, Hawkeye energy dissipating. "Which is worse than being evil, honestly. At least evil is interesting. You're just static, unchanging, predictable." He yawned, showing fangs. "Leave Earth alone. Third invasion means I erase Apocalypse regardless of political consequences. Superman's mercy has limits, and so does mine." Darkseid opened a boom tube and paused at the threshold. "You destroyed the anti-life equation, my life's work, my proof of rightful authority. Yes, it was philosophically offensive and threatened agriculture. I'm not sorry. I will remember this." "Good. Remember it every time you consider invading Earth. Remember that cuisine matters more to me than your tyrannical ambitions. Remember that gods of destruction don't care about your logical justifications." Beerus smiled coldly. "And remember that Superman, reformed tyrant, showed you more mercy than I would have without his intervention. Darkseid departed through the boom tube, not victorious, not defeated, denied his equation, stripped of philosophical justification, forced to retreat by power he couldn't counter and mercy he didn't deserve. As the portal closed, Beerus looked at Superman with something approaching approval. You intervened on his behalf, asked me to spare someone who tried to enslave you twice. That's either wisdom or stupidity. Both, probably, Clark admitted. But killing him felt like regression, like proving the anti-life equation's argument that power justifies anything. I had to try choosing differently. Beerus turned to examine Earth, battered, exhausted, free. 8 billion people recovering from a brief period where tyranny had seemed mathematically correct, remembering why they'd chosen messy democracy over elegant authoritarianism. Your planet continues to surprise me, surviving apocalypse twice, resisting the anti-life equation long enough for help to arrive, showing mercy to enemies. He looked at Marcus's restaurant, visible from orbital heights, and maintaining food culture through all of it. Is that enough? Diana asked, joining them in flight. Are we worthy of your protection? Do we meet your standards? Worthy? Beerus considered the question seriously. You're not perfect. Your cuisine has room for improvement. Your civilization is fragile. Your tendency to attract cosmic threats is concerning. He smiled slightly. But you're learning, growing, choosing freedom despite its costs, creating culture rather than reproducing efficiency. That's worth preserving. So you'll keep protecting us? Flash asked, vibrating with hope and exhaustion. I'll keep observing. If you maintain your commitment to culinary diversity, avoid authoritarian regression, and continue developing food culture, yes, my protection continues. Conditionally, provisionally, revocably if you disappoint me. Beerus looked at Superman directly. Especially you. Your redemption arc is interesting, but one relapse means I erase you before you can rebuild the regime. Clear. Crystal clear, Clark said. Thank you for saving us again, for destroying the equation, for showing mercy when you didn't have to. I didn't show mercy. I made a strategic decision based on Superman's philosophical argument and my own curiosity about whether Darkseid can learn. Beerus turned toward where Wise prepared the dimensional portal home. Though I suppose that's what mercy is, choosing not to destroy when destruction would be justified. How disappointingly heroic of me. Beerus is developing a fondness for Earth, Wise observed with a subtle smile. How unlike a god of destruction. I'm not fond. I'm invested in their culinary potential, completely different emotional category. Of course, my lord. Beerus paused at the portal threshold, looked back at Earth's heroes assembled in the sky above a planet that kept surviving impossible odds. Marcus's restaurant, tomorrow evening. I want to sample whatever he's developed during the 3 months since my last visit. If quality has declined, I'm reconsidering this entire protection arrangement. I'll make sure he knows, Batman said, already calculating how to convey God of Destruction dinner reservation to a chef without causing panic. See that you do. Beerus stepped through the portal, Wise following, and the rift sealed behind them. Earth's heroes floated in silence for long moments, processing what had just occurred. Darkseid obtaining the anti-life equation, 8 billion people nearly converted to rational tyranny, salvation through a god who cared more about strawberries than philosophy, and Superman's choice to show mercy creating precedent for cosmic restraint. We just survived the anti-life equation, Flash said slowly. The thing Darkseid's been searching for since the universe began, because Beerus destroyed it for threatening food culture. Yes, Batman confirmed. That's insane. Yes, Batman agreed. But we're alive, free, still choosing democracy despite just experiencing proof that authoritarianism is logically optimal. Diana looked at her hands, blessed by gods, wielding a broken sword, choosing to protect rather than rule despite every argument suggesting otherwise. We keep surviving through absurd circumstances and cosmic whim. At what point does that stop being luck and become something else? Hope, Superman said quietly. At the point where we stop just surviving and start actually learning from our survival. Where we prove Beerus right to protect us by maintaining what he values: culture, choice, freedom, creativity. Where we demonstrate that power can serve rather than control, that strength can show mercy, that even reformed tyrants can teach gods of destruction about restraint. "You think Beerus learned from you?" Hal asked skeptically. "I think we're teaching each other. He teaches us that power without wisdom is just violence. We teach him that mortals choosing freedom despite vulnerability creates value worth preserving beyond just cuisine. Symbiotic education." Clark smiled slightly, though he'd never admit it. They descended to Earth, to cities recovering from a brief period where surrender seemed rational, to governments rebuilding after near collapse, to 8 billion people choosing democracy again, despite just experiencing philosophical proof that authoritarianism was correct. Marcus received Batman's message about Beerus's dinner reservation with the calm acceptance of someone who'd survived Superman's regime, Apocalypse's invasion, Frost's testing, and the anti-life equation. One more impossible challenge was just another Tuesday. Tomorrow evening, God of Destruction, expecting quality improvement. Marcus nodded slowly. "Better get started on prep work. Elena, we're going to need the good chocolate." That evening, Superman stood on the Daily Planet's roof, rebuilt again, operating again, free press again, watching the sun set over Metropolis. The city showed damage from both invasions, from anti-life equation's brief acceptance, from all the impossible threats Earth kept surviving through cosmic protection and stubborn cultural persistence. Lois joined him, shoulder against his, comfortable silence between them. Finally, she spoke. "You saved Darkseid's life, convinced Beerus to show mercy, after everything he tried to do." "Yes. Why?" "Because," Clark said softly, "Beerus gave me a second chance despite no logical reason to do so. Showed mercy when destroying me would have been easier, safer, and more efficient. I'm learning that mercy is how power becomes wisdom instead of just violence. If a god of destruction can choose restraint, if a reformed tyrant can argue for mercy, if a planet can choose freedom despite mathematical proof otherwise." He looked at her directly. "Then maybe hope isn't irrational after all. Maybe it's the most rational choice we have. Hope shines brightest in the darkest night," Lois quoted. "Even when the darkness is absolute philosophical certainty, especially then." Clark wrapped his arm around her gently, Kryptonian strength that could reshape worlds, choosing to embrace rather than control. "We keep surviving because we keep choosing. That's what Beerus protects. That's what makes us worth not destroying." Across the universe, Darkseid returned to Apocalypse, anti-life equation destroyed, dignity bruised, forced to retreat by a purple deity who valued cuisine over conquest. His throne room felt emptier without the equation's certainty, without the mathematical proof that his tyranny was correct. But somewhere in that emptiness, a question emerged. If the anti-life equation, his ultimate weapon, his perfect proof, could be destroyed by a being who cared more about food than philosophy, what did that say about power itself? Darkseid had no answer. Yet, but for the first time in his eternal existence, he wondered if the question mattered. In Universe 7, Beerus returned to his planet, settled onto his throne, and accepted tea from Wise with the satisfied expression of someone who'd addressed an annoyance efficiently. "You destroyed the anti-life equation," Wise observed. "One of the universe's fundamental philosophical constructs. The Supreme Kai will have questions. Tell them it was threatening Earth's agricultural development. Very official concern. You showed mercy to Darkseid on Superman's recommendation. Strategic decision based on political consequences, not mercy. You're becoming attached to Earth," Wise said gently, "developing protective instincts beyond just culinary interest." Beerus was silent for long moments, sipping tea, considering denial. Finally, perhaps. "They're learning what most mortals never grasp, that power's purpose is preservation, not control, that strength can serve, that even gods can choose restraint. It's He struggled for words. Educational for both of us. How very unlike a god of destruction. Yes, Beerus agreed, smiling slightly. Disappointingly heroic. Don't tell anyone. Your secret is safe with me, my lord. On Earth, in a restaurant that had survived regime oppression and cosmic evaluation, Marcus prepared for tomorrow's dinner service with a divine guest. Not nervous, not afraid, just committed to demonstrating that Earth's cuisine deserved preservation, that culture mattered more than efficiency, that humanity maintained beauty even under existential threats. Hope shone brightest in the darkest night, and Earth, battered and free and learning, kept choosing to shine. 9 months after a god of destruction first crashed into the injustice universe, Earth had survived the impossible. Superman's regime, Apocalypse's invasion, Universe 7's evaluation, Frost's testing, and Darkseid's anti-life equation. Not through superior power, Earth remained cosmically insignificant by most standards, but through stubborn commitment to principles that shouldn't matter in a universe ruled by strength, but somehow did. Superman completed his transformation from tyrant to hero through relentless, exhausting choice. Every rescue is measured. Every intervention is carefully restrained. Every day, proving that godlike power could serve rather than rule. The psychological cost remained immense. Constant vigilance against authoritarian reflexes. Eternal awareness that one relapse meant Beerus's erasure. But Clark Kent learned to live with that weight, understanding that redemption wasn't a destination but a perpetual journey. The Justice League rebuilt as an actual team rather than regime enforcers. Diana learned to lead without controlling. Bruce's paranoid preparation prevented disasters instead of justifying authoritarianism. Flash's speed saved thousands without enabling tyranny. Hal's willpower was protected rather than enforced. Earth's heroes demonstrated daily that power could exist without domination. And Marcus's restaurant became symbol, proof that culture mattered, that cuisine represented humanity's soul, that preserving beauty through impossible threats was itself a heroic act. Beerus visited regularly, sampling Earth's culinary evolution, ensuring no one eliminated food diversity for administrative convenience. His protection remained conditional, provisional, but genuine. Earth existed under the divine observation of a god who valued strawberries over sovereignty. The victory wasn't clean. Thousands died in Apocalypse's invasions. Regime victims couldn't be resurrected. Agricultural knowledge was lost despite preservation efforts. Earth bore scars that decades wouldn't fully heal, but it remained free, messy, imperfect, choosing. Darkseid would return eventually. Tyrants always did. Universe 7 would send more visitors to test Earth's significance. New threats would emerge from dimensional rifts. But Earth had learned the crucial lesson. Survival meant maintaining principles under pressure, demonstrating that freedom was worth its costs, proving that hope wasn't a mathematical delusion but a rational choice in the face of an uncertain universe. Beerus had judged them worthy not through power but through persistence, not through victory but through choosing correctly despite losses, not through perfection but through commitment to becoming better. And somewhere in the multiverse's infinite complications, a reformed tyrant and a god of destruction continued their unlikely education, teaching each other that strength without wisdom was just violence, that mercy was the hardest demonstration of power, that preserving culture mattered more than most cosmic hierarchies acknowledged. The Injustice universe learned what Universe 7 already knew. Hope shines brightest in the darkest night, and Earth, impossibly, kept choosing to shine. Hope shines brightest in the darkest night. More stories await.